fantastic. Is it Wednesday already? Wednesday to you all, no matter where in the world you're joining us from. I'm Sonia Mahan, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. And we have a fantastic journey planned for you in the next hour that we're going to be engaging with you. We're coming from the Sagicor Cave Hill School of Business and Management here at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus. And this is another in our series for the Executive Leadership and Discussion Forum. And today's topic, we're talking about beyond barriers, building a legacy of power, purpose, and performance, and how well timed it is. It is still January, the first month of the new year. And I hope that all of you are still filled with that sense of expectation and possibility that a new year, a new beginning always brings. Today, we have an esteemed panel, and I know you often hear that at the beginning of discussions such as this, but we really mean it here. An esteemed panel of persons, of ladies who are going to talk about exactly what the title is, power, purpose, and performance, and engage with you on their journey from where they started to where they are now and what they hope to accomplish in their personal and their professional, and maybe a bit of how their personal journeys were undertaking. You hear me stumbling on my words because I'm trying to tampen down the excitement. And my students always tell me, can you slow down? So I'm trying to be professional and slow down my speech, but you can hopefully see how excited I am to engage with these ladies. You hear me use the word engage because it's supposed to be interactive. Please put your questions in the Q&A. It is not a lecture, it's a discussion, it is a conversation, and we want to take advantage of the panelists this morning. Without further ado, I'm going to give brief introductions because we're supposed to, and then I'm going to ask our panelists their first question. But before we do, let me introduce. So we have Maria Daniel over to my upper left. I'm not sure where they're showing up on your screens, but Maria is the managing partner and service line leader for EY Parthenon in the Caribbean, where she leads the firm's strategy and transactions advisory practice across the region. With over 2 decades of experience, Maria has advised boards, governments, and executive teams on high-impact strategic decisions spanning growth strategy, mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, restructuring, and public sector advisory. She is known for combining rigorous analysis with practical, people-centered leadership, translating strategy into action in complex and evolving environments. Maria is deeply passionate about building inclusive, high-performing teams and mentoring the next generation of leaders. In fact, she often jokes that EY Parthenon Caribbean has a diversity challenge. All of its associate partners are women, with over 90% of the team being female, proof that when talent leads, balance tends to follow. Under her leadership, EY Parthenon has expanded its footprint across the Caribbean, strengthening local capabilities while connecting clients to global expertise. Maria is a respected regional voice on leadership, transformation, and navigating change with clarity and purpose. Good morning, Maria, and welcome.
Good morning, Sonia.
Shafia is a resilient and highly organized, Shafia London is a resilient and highly organized leader who currently serves as the general manager of the SLU Group of Companies, which consists of BHL Group of Companies and St. Vincent Brewery Limited. She brings over 17 years of progressive leadership at the local and regional level. She began her journey with the global company ABI, first as marketing manager, and at the St. Vincent Brewery Limited, rising rapidly through the ranks in marketing and commercial roles to oversee operations across multiple markets. Her strategic insight and operational excellence earned her the title of Top Business Leader, ABI, in the Caribbean and Latin America, and that was in 2022. She holds an MBA with distinction from the UE Cave Hill, a master's degree in biochemical engineering from the University College London, and a bachelor's in biochemistry with double minors in HRM and communication from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine. Beyond her corporate achievements, she's deeply committed to community service. A past president of the Rotary Club in St. Vincent, she remains an active philanthropist, championing local development and youth empowerment initiatives. So, good morning to you, Shafia, as well.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
And last but not least, I know a cliche, Alison Browne-Ellis is a dynamic and experienced corporate executive with over 25 years of expertise and a proven track record of driving transformation with unwavering excellence. In her current capacity as CEO, she leads a dynamic team and sets strategy for Cape Shepherd Card, Barbados, Inc. As a visionary leader, I always think of that as space, Alison. As a
It is.
visionary As a visionary leader, Alison has successfully led her company to acquire the status of the first non-financial institution in the English-speaking Latin American Caribbean region to obtain a principal membership license with Visa International, while spearheading the launch of one of Barbados's first digital payment wallets. See, I remember pace. She also spearheaded the first financing partnership with IDB Invest in Barbados to a non-bank under Barbados law and in Barbados currency. Did I mention that I was following pace? Yes. Prior to her current role, she spent 13 years in banking, leading change initiatives in the payments industry with expertise in implementation of innovative products, business development, marketing, credit, and customer experience strategies, which resulted in enhanced productivity and performance. She holds an executive diploma from the Ivy Business School, Western University, an MBA with distinction from the University of Surrey. She's also a certified John Maxwell team coach. Right. She is a past vice president and council member of the Barbados Chamber of Commerce and Industry, past chair of the Marketing and Communications Committee of the BCCI, and also a member of the board of the National Payment System Council. I'm taking a breath because she juggles many hats while maneuvering the rigors of the corporate world. As a career mom, wife, board and committee member, professional mentor, and inspirational speaker. Beyond her professional achievement, she embraces her God-given purpose and passion, which led her to become an award-winning author of the book Life Lessons, A Purpose-Driven Leadership Journey, and her 365-day inspirational desk calendar, which continues to be an inspiration to many. She's a catalyst with a passion for development and advancement of women, which has led her to become a founder of Boss Ladies United, a professional development and networking association for women in Barbados. Alison lives by the mantra, anything worth doing simply needs to get done. So, with that introduction, I am going to lead us into the first question, and I am going to ask again, remember, don't hesitate to put your questions in for the panel. I'm going to start with you, Shafia, then come to you, Maria, and then to you, Alison. I'm giving you 1 minute, and I'm going to be moderating the session, which means I'm keeping us on time. What is the one takeaway that you want our audience before we begin the conversation to know about you and your journey from then till now? What is the one thing you want them to know about you before we begin?
Um, what I'd want them to take away is that I've learned that life isn't a straight journey. It's not a destination as well. Each role, each challenge, each pause has added clarity and should add clarity rather than defining limits. As women, we are often very hard on ourselves than we need to be, and we tend to measure success by perfection instead of growth. And my leadership today is grounded in that perspective. It's grounded in that experience where we should deliver results while staying human and push forward while understanding context and recognizing that how we lead matters just as much as what we achieve. So life isn't a straight journey and it's not a destination. It's a journey and we learn, and I learn every single day.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. Maria, you're going to add to this.
I know. Oh my God. Good morning, everyone, again. Very happy to be here. I was in Kfil, Sonia, more than 30 years ago. So before you, for me, the takeaway is to be fearless. you have to be fearless. If you want to succeed, if you want to really get where you set your mind to, you can't set restrictions to yourself. So I would say my journey, very male dominated industry. I've been the only woman in many negotiations, in many rooms, as I'm sure my other speakers have been. And to be able to get where I was to just be fearless, not afraid to try new things, not afraid to fail. I do this in my personal life and in my professional life. My saying is it's a human thought of it to begin with, so I could think of it myself. So there's nothing I don't try to challenge and find a solution. So as you go along your journey, be fearless, challenge yourself. You are who you are competing against, not the person next to you, not the person behind you or in front of you. Keep telling yourself, have your mantras. Every year I try to learn something new that's very different. So I started last year surfing, and I am 55 years old. So again, don't listen to the naysayers, be fearless.
Nice. Well, Maria, I'm going to start. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for extending the invitation. I'm going to piggyback on what Maria said, because in a different context, I'm going to speak about the importance of having courage, right? That's where my journey started. I'm someone that moves with intention. And if that's the one takeaway that you will, if you follow me, if you're interested in understanding where my journey started and where it is now, it's all been about moving with intention. But there's a caveat to that, because intention requires courage. So while Maria is saying to be fearless, I don't know that I've always been fearless. I can tell you that I've been more courageous than fearless, and meaning that I've been able to put myself, be able to envision where I want to be in this space and in the journey and the different rooms I want to be in, and have the courage to step forward and put myself in a position to say, hey, this person can add value, right? So a lot of my confidence comes from the fact that first, I'm willing to be courageous, and second, I'm someone that believes, similar to Maria again, in making sure that I'm adding value in every space that I occupy. That means that I have to be a continuous learner. I'm not as brave as surfing, but I'm literally someone that is always looking to improve on myself, so that when I step into a space, I can leave it better than when I found it.
Wow, and that is a fantastic place to begin. Again, we are in January, and I know one exercise that a great friend of mine introduced me to 2 years ago was figure out the 3 words of what you want, just 3 words. What do you want to accomplish this year? And you ladies have reinforced some of what I had planned. I haven't picked up my 3 words, but from this conversation, and you see me looking down because I wrote it down, I still like pen and paper versus typing. Being kind to yourself, Shafia, being fearless, Maria, being courageous, and wrapped up from all of you, continuous learning. I know this is more than 3 words, continuous learning and intentional is what I've taken away from that introduction. From our audience is from all over the place, like how we say here in Barbados. And greetings from Turks and Caicos, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Lucia, Guyana, the Bahamas, Barbados. We have persons coming in from every which way. So good morning to you all. And I'm going to then start out. I'm going to pose a question to you, and you can tell me who wants to pick up the question. Again, if you have the audience, if you have questions, don't hesitate. Put that in the chat so that we can engage them here. What invisible pressures do you believe that senior women leaders in particular carry? And how do you manage those pressures, without compromising performance or well-being? And I heard each of you touch on this already about being yourselves in those spaces that you occupy, very male-dominated spaces. And as we ascend in organizations, even though they might be women at the lower levels, as you get more senior, no matter the industry we seem to be in, it becomes more male dominated. So how do you navigate that as senior leaders? How you navigate that?
Yeah. If I'll go first, and happy to
So
hear the
I'll chime in.
perspectives
Sure, we
Right.
can chime in.
So one of the conversations I've been having a lot recently in terms of either public speaking or persons that reach out for mentorship is that we as women face a lot of those invisible barriers, right? I think it is a reality and we have to call it what it is. And the reason I say that, or from where I sit, is that we as women are literally operating, and constantly, the others may have a different view, where we find ourselves in a space where we are cultured to overperform. Right? We are constantly in a space where we are, showing up a lot stronger in many instances than our male counterparts, but we're doing that while we're juggling life. And when I say life, I mean the responsibilities of families, maybe the responsibilities of, I heard Shafia is in an organization or led, I think it's another club. And so in my space, I'm leading another business where around empowerment of women. So we're juggling many things, but that desire to still show up and be as successful or show up in excellence is driving a lot of the way that we're performing and what we're pouring out. The challenge I have with that is not that we're showing up strong and we're showing up in excellence, is that we are also somehow attributing our worth to the last performance, as opposed to recognizing over time we're cumulative collection of how we have performed over time. And I'm struggling with this because I'm seeing it all the time. So we don't give ourselves sufficient grace, and then we are also in a space where we are actually lobbying for others. So we're in rooms where we're lobbying for others that either look like us or don't look like us, but we've taken on that responsibility to say, listen, this is the right thing to do and somebody needs to represent. So we're always stretching ourselves, whether it's in making sure that our next performance is better than the last one, or juggling life. Many people talk about work-life balance. I personally have moved away from that. I believe in work-life blend because I don't know any other way, being quite frank. And then I think it's just recognizing that we carry a lot more, right? There's a lot that, I mean, if everyone on the call, if you have a team, people are constantly pulling on you. And therefore, the question is, how do you manage all these different responsibilities and hats and still give yourself sufficient grace that you actually say, you know what, today is not my strongest day and I don't have to outperform what I did yesterday. I can give myself some grace today and be comfortable with that, because you might give yourself grace, but then you're beating yourself up constantly because you're not comfortable with it. So those are the bits I will start with, and I'm sure the others will add.
Yeah, I think though that a lot of that is driven by, and I think this is the invisible kind of challenge we have, which is self-inflicted, which is guilt. So the working mother, and this goes to the working mothers, is constantly guilty they're not at work when they have to be with the family, and guilty when they're at work that they're not with their kids. So it goes back to what you're saying, Alison. The reason we do this outperforming is because we carry this, and I tell all my young women, please hang up the guilt, right? You do not need to go 20 hours a day because you feel you weren't there for 1 hour to take care of your kids. So I think there's this invisible guilt, and I have 3 kids, three girls, and I had them early when I just became a partner, and I carry this. I mean, after 3 weeks of giving birth, I had them on the couch, came to the office, and on my delivery table, I answered a call because we were in the middle of a transaction. So when you talk about pushing yourselves, I know exactly what you're saying, because I was like, I can't tell the client that I can't finish off the transaction because I'm having a baby. So while I'm delivering, I took the call. I said, I'm in labor. I'll call you right back. So I hear you, and it is exactly what you're saying. Give the grace. But it is what gets you where we are, though, right? Because I've been in meetings with other women, where it might be myself and another woman, and she would whisper to me, and she said they would never listen if I spoke, and she would be telling me what she wants to say, and I'm saying, no, just speak up, just speak up. So I think a lot of it is self-inflicted, as you said, and it's this, and I think Shafia said it as well. We feel that we always have to constantly be better than everyone else, but to be the honest truth, for us to break the barriers, which this is about, we had to do that. But where we are
Yeah,
now is not exactly where we need to be in the next 10 years.
And that's a
I
great
want to,
point.
sorry. Oh, I
No,
want to
just
just
saying that that's a great point.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to go in a little bit more on that point, because like both of you, I have a family as well. And what I've come to realize is that unfortunately for women, the world isn't very kind sometimes. And we are actually kinder to men. So it's understood that a man can stay up to midnight and work, and he doesn't have to tuck his children in because that's understood. But that pressure, that leadership doesn't soften just because you have a family, and family life doesn't pause because you're in a senior role. So, but there are moments when you have to accept that you will drop the ball on one side. Some
Have
nights
to.
you're not going to
Yep.
be able to tuck those children in because you have a board budget that you need to finalize. Other times you might have a very important meeting, maybe labor, that your family needs you, and it doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're human. So what is
Agreed.
really important is being intentional and not trying to achieve perfection. So how I manage this is being very clear about my priorities in seasons and setting boundaries. So if I am at my child's let's say concert, it doesn't matter who's calling me. I'm at my child's concert.
Exactly.
The world might not be kind and might not understand, but at the end of the day, when we as leaders model that humanity is important and it doesn't weaken performance, we could create a culture where people can sustain excellence over time.
Yes.
Totally agree. I mean, I tell my female, and like as Sonia said, I have an all-female team at the leadership. And I said, we are not to miss the concerts. We are not to miss sports day. If it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and we have, as you're saying, Shafia, we might be able to do it all the time, but we work around it. I never miss ballet. I never miss karate. I never miss all the things that my kids did, but I was in the car sometimes on the computer at the same time. So, it can be done.
No, I think this is very encouraging to hear, especially from where I sit, because I was telling someone the other day that we've done an injustice to the teams coming behind us, to the young women in business coming behind us, because if we continue to show up and just run ourselves into a state of burnout without giving ourselves grace, then that's what they think success looks like. That's what they think is required for them to have a seat at the table. And I don't know about the ladies on the call, but if someone had showed me differently, I would have done differently.
Yeah, I
That's
also think too, I just want to add this because this is important. I also think that is such a great point, Alison, because what I do think is happening is some women are choosing, I don't want to go further. And that's what I'm seeing. So I'm saying, we have all these statistics, women not on boards, women are not CEOs. I have news for everybody. A lot of it is choice. A lot of it is choice. And not because the opportunity isn't there. It's because a lot of women are saying, you see that ragged life? I don't want it.
Yep.
And that's a great segue. Just letting you know the audience is engaged. Antonio said a little while ago, as we had started the conversation, because sometimes good is good enough. And having giving us ourselves the permission and those who come afterwards that we are aiming for excellence, but we don't have to outperform what the standards are. If we set the standards, sometimes good is good enough. And we have Michelle and Christina saying setting boundaries is a great takeaway from this part of the discussion. Knowing that the boundaries are permeable and knowing that they're not static. As seasons change, I love that, Shafia. We are in seasons. And I remember many years ago reading Proverbs 31. So in church, everybody was hailing this Proverbs 31 woman, and I read through and it was like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. This was a picture of her entire life, not one snapshot. The Proverbs 31 one was in seasons. There were seasons that she was performing. It was not all things at all times to all people in all circumstances. It was seasons. So Amanda now has a question, and thank you for the question. So I want you to listen carefully to what she says. It's in the Q&A. If the leadership legacy were audited, so Maria, And Allison, this is right in your ballpark. Shafia, you were going to weigh in here as well. If leadership legacy were audited the way financial performance is, what uncomfortable metric do you think most leaders would fail and why? So if leadership legacy, and we're speaking a lot of what the generations that are coming next, and that's going to be a question at the end. If we audited leadership legacy like we audit financial performance, what metric would have that F? What metric would have the auditors pulling their hair out? What would
That's a
most,
deep one.
yes, that is it.
That's a
Amanda.
great question. That's
That's
a
a
great
great
question.
question.
Um,
We always have a
I
great
think
audience.
because I'm at the age now where I'm seeing a lot of the male leaders are now retiring. And I think where they would have failed was how to let go. Maybe some of it is succession planning. So what I see is a lot of leaders, and when you talk about legacy, legacy becomes them. And when it is to hand it over to the next generation, this feeling of relevance, right?
Yes.
Because a good leader is, I can exit and the business continues to grow. That's how you know you've been a good leader. A good leader is not someone where without them, the business doesn't run. So I see when these legacy leadership, where I would put the F, is understanding relevance, their relevance and holding on to it. And then everything they built goes to negative because people are saying, dude, your time is over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Someone
absolutely.
No,
Go
so
ahead.
that's a very interesting question, and I love your response, Maria, because my response is similar, but it's looking at it and evaluating the women side of it, the women in leadership. And the reason why I went there is because many times we don't get the best out of our people because the F for me would be in the insecurities that we bring to our leadership, right? I remember one time someone said to me, in my director at the time, but you're teaching her everything. I'm like, that's exactly the point. I'm teaching myself out of this pressure because somebody else has to carry some of the burden, right? But that's not the traditional way of thinking being
Right?
very real, right? Not the traditional way for many women. They come into the room and they want to be the one with the voice and they want to be the one speaking up. And when someone else asserts himself, it could become a little problematic. So if that's where, to me, the F would come, because it's the relevance. So there's a question mark around whether you're relevant enough if you allow someone else space to also show up and show potential. And I think that is one of the things that I'm intentional to do the opposite, right? In my leadership.
Agreed.
And
Yeah, just to add to that, I think especially in Caribbean businesses, a lot of decisions are made based on personal preferences. And similar to what
Mm.
Maria said, when those leaders leave, there is nothing, like you don't understand the thinking. So how can you, and if you're auditing finances, you want to ensure the frameworks and everything is there, so everybody's following some structure. And I find sometimes structure is lacking and it's built on the leader's personality and preferences. But as a leader and so you build legacy, you really should embed decision framework. You really should document institutional knowledge. You really should develop people so that progress doesn't pause or end when you exit, because that's not legacy, that's fragility. And so legacy to me is not about personal recognition and preferences. It's about systems that outlast you. And those systems consist of the people, the frameworks, and the institutional knowledge.
And the culture, I think the culture is
And the
important
culture,
there because
yes.
that's behaviors,
So Antonia has a great question here. And again, thank you so much, audience, for engaging with us. They're agreeing with you. They're giving examples in the chat and the Q&A. So keep that up. And Antonia asks, what does power with integrity look like in practice, particularly as women leading in traditionally male-dominated spaces? And I'm going to add a caveat to that. From redoing the readings and so on, it often seems that women transform into male characteristics when we ascend in order to establish some sort of credibility, whether self-imposed or not, in those
Oh gosh,
spaces. So that's
that's
my
so
whole
true.
spin on that. So what does power with integrity look like in practice for you? And I'm going to start with Shafia this time and then come around. Shafia?
All right. I think it has to be about the battles that you choose. A lot of norms that may not necessarily be uh virtuous could exist in organizations, and you want to build, but you also don't want to always confront every single day because that could be disruptive. So I think choosing your battle carefully, building evidence, building allies so that you can be part of the change. I think Maria might have mentioned it about Alison, sorry, about being a change agent, but change is not something you can do overnight. So I've learned that you choose your battles and you separate challenge from confrontation. So you can
Mm.
disrupt systems, you could work with integrity while remaining credible, but you have to ensure that what you do is grounded in integrity, is grounded in values, and grounded in organizational benefits.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
And
me,
Maria?
it's authenticity. That's my integrity, and I'm quite known for it. I'm very direct. Um, I have turned away clients that I don't think meet the values that I would want to represent. And I tell all my clients, if you want an advisor that tells you what you want to hear, I'm not it. I am not it. I make no apology for it. And, we do this kind of people pulse survey all the time in EY. And the one thing I always look at is, we ask the question, are you free to be yourself? And almost over all the years, that is very close to 100% in my team. And that's important because if I show up as myself, I have to expect and have, the broad enough mind to allow everyone to be themselves. And that's true integrity, right? Authenticity, because the minute you start to make decisions that you don't feel true to you, then you've lost integrity.
Mhm, mhm.
And
That's
Alison,
great.
you're going to come in there?
Yeah, I would just say for me, power without purpose doesn't make any sense, right? That you have to be moving with your leadership has to be so purpose driven that people can connect with what you stand for, what you're about, and where you're taking the organization, right? And that's on the lead, just in terms of organizational side. You have to have purpose attached to the power. Otherwise, you are literally just going to be someone that is, just kind of spitting out direction as opposed to really owning your power. I think one of the biggest ways that we kind of assess our integrity is in our ability to gain trust. Not demand respect, but gain trust. Because when you gain it naturally just from your authenticity and how you show up, then you're inspiring and igniting confidence for others to believe and buy in and actually help you to be able to progress, whatever the agenda is. And I think that is very important, recognizing that you can't do it on your own. So the integrity comes in from recognizing that you have to bring people along on the journey. And the easiest way to do that is by being a true authentic self so that when challenges come, you're not flip-flopping, because it's one thing to be who you are authentic and say you're authentic when times are good, but the same
Exactly.
values have to
Exactly.
permeate through your delivery when you're in a crisis.
Exactly.
Right. So that's just for me. So being purposeful allows you to really assess what your values are. And once you're consistent in your values, then you can be authentic. You can be who you are in the tough calls and in the easy ones.
Exactly. And you have to stay true to that.
Yeah.
You
At
said
your own
you said
detriment.
something about women. You said something about women turning
Yes.
into men as they become leaders. I quite like that interesting spin. It's something I observe. Yes, it does happen, and I guess it really goes back to being your authentic self. But I always remind myself that at the end of the day, I got here as a woman, and I'm going to stay here and continue to grow here as a woman. So I do simple things to remind myself I don't have to be a man. I wear my high heels. I work in a brewery, and
Live
sometimes I
in my
think,
high
listen,
heels, not giving
my
that up.
my hard toe shoes are high heels, and they would laugh
Love
at me
it. I
and
love it.
pull over.
I agree with you.
So you have to always, because yes, the world makes you tough and rough, and you have to speak up, you have to be very confident, very bold, disrupt, and that may give a male aura, because women,
Yes.
we have been taught to be soft and sensitive and empathetic. And sometimes, as my male friends would say, you have to sometimes bring out the alpha in you to get things done. It's part of
It's
leadership.
true. It's true.
So, but when you find yourself living or marinated in that world a little bit too much, just do little things, do your hair, put on your makeup if you're into those things, and you show up all woman, and I'm woman. And sometimes you get even more respect, because at the end of the day, you show your versatility as a human, that you could be that, but you could also be empathetic, which is actually one of the reasons why women actually make great leaders, because we can be both.
We both
Yes,
agree.
absolutely.
And I'm sure you all have heard these terms. I've heard it through my whole life. Oh, you're being emotional. No, I'm being passionate. That's why I'm good at what I do. And I'm speaking up. And yes, I'm a woman, so maybe I put more emotion to it than a man might, but that's who I am. I mean, I have actually won a job once because someone said, you know what, you have so much passion in your eyes, we'll hire you. We know you're putting heart to it. Right? So I totally agree with you. I tell people, yep, I'm a woman. Fair enough.
No, there's no backing down from that. And you know what? And it's to love it too, right? And to come into spaces where even if it's your colleagues that are males and they are speaking, this is one of the things that I've experienced it so many times, where they speak over you or they repeat what you say.
Oh,
And then
man.
I literally in the same way.
Alison, I often just say quickly, I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. Like, did I just say that? You have to remind them of.
Yeah. So this is what you say. Oh, thanks for repeating what I just said. Yes,
Literally,
blah, blah, blah.
yes.
Yeah, that's what you
Yes.
literally have to say. Thanks for repeating what I just said.
I'm about to throw
But these are real things that we endure, right?
We do,
And we
of
have to
course.
still show up as we
as
are.
authentic yourself.
Yes.
Great segue. I'm going to combine two questions, one from Andrea and one from Odette. How do you, and this is for me, I know this is a weak spot. So I'm really interested in hearing how you're going to answer this question. The combination of the questions. How do you manage the internal politics at the C-suite level? And what advice would you give? And this I'm combining with, when you have to super glue something together because they don't quite fit, but I want that to be under the lens of what limitations are you still negotiating with? Yeah, what limitations are you still, if any, especially at that C-suite level? So managing internal politics at that level, are there any, or have we arrived at the promised land? If any limitations that you are still negotiating?
I'll probably jump in.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, just last night I was actually reading a leadership book at Boyle, I think it's called, and it was talking about politics. And one of the things it mentioned is that people have this utopia that politics is bad and politics should not exist. The truth is, as long as you're in an organization, there will always be politics. Whether at the C-suite level, the front line, there will always be politics. And when you get to the C-suite, you have to understand that power is not positional. It's not the position that you have. It's your ability to shape outcomes, even when you're not the loudest voice in that room. And you have to show your influence by how you show up in connecting dots that others don't see. So I want to borrow, Alison, when you talk about purpose and how you connect people, performance, and purpose. And your credibility in doing so, you earn that over time. People begin to trust your judgment. They begin to see the consistency between what you say and what you do. And when those align, then your influence, whether in the C-suite room, at the front level, it becomes more sustainable and far-reaching, and people listen. You don't have to be the loudest. You just have to build that credibility and earn it over time when you converge that consistency between what you say and what you do, and you connect the dots over people, performance, and purpose.
Yeah. But I think
No,
it's a
that's
balance though, right? Because sometimes, I'm sorry, you have to be the loudest in the room. Sometimes. It's knowing when. It's like what you said at the beginning, Shafia, is choosing your
Yes.
battles, right? So for me, my mantra since I was a junior was, and maybe this is a little bit Alison, when you're talking about outperforming, but my outperforming for me was not for being a woman. My outperforming is when I want something, the way I'm going to get it is if I make a lot of money for the people in charge, then I'm going to get my own way.
Mhm.
So it is work hard, deliver revenue, and at the end of the day, like for my team, I am known for it. I fight like a warahun. And no apology about it. I am the loudest in the room. Everybody knows that, you know. But at the same time, what I've learned over time, and this is where, as you evolve, is sometimes you do have to shut up, which is very hard for me from a natural way, right? But I've learned over time, taking Shafia's great advice is okay, that battle, I'm just not gonna say anything. Because you know what? The outcome to me and the outcome to my team is gonna be insignificant. When it's
Yeah,
significant though, I open my mouth
yeah,
without
So
no,
you're evaluating ROI for the battles.
Exactly. That's a great way to put
Exactly. Is this worth
so
my time?
Right.
so I would definitely say that the politics is not going anywhere, right? And
Will always be
politics
there.
brings it forces you to look at different perspectives. So, and I think that as a leader, we have to remain open to that. I think when politics becomes problematic is when it starts to really become a barrier to progress. And if we can learn to operate as women, and I think this is one of the areas that we're not as strong, where we struggle to operate within the politics. You have to, someone mentioned it, understanding your allies, but also when you have clarity in your intentions and you've started to garner that trust, it's also then leveraging the fact that you have a voice, and your voice has a weight, and then knowing when to tap into that, because it's not every time I tap into the weight of my voice, but if I feel strongly enough about something, which is tied to my intention, if I feel passionate about something, trust me, I'm like Maria, my voice is going to be heard. You ain't no ignoring me. And that is important, to know when to push and when to
And to
pull. That's
pull.
what
Yep.
politics is all
Yep.
about, right? And I think that that's something that we have to learn, and maybe train better when we're at the C-suite level, and making sure people understand the dynamics of how to operate.
Yeah, you say the word intent, and it's also being strategic, right?
Mhm.
It's being strategic, thinking through, okay, what are these outcomes? What makes sense and what adds value? Like for this year, I've said my New Year's resolution is no waste. I'm not wasting my energy on things that are not adding value. I'm not wasting money, and I'm not wasting my time.
I love that. But just to close that point, and I think it fits nicely, is where we also start to see our success as a strategy, because you have to see success as a strategy. Otherwise, you walk into things blindly. You have to know that you've acquired sufficient success over time, that compound effect gets you to
Exactly.
almost start to leverage some of the levers you need to pull to have the outcomes that you desire, right? But for me, I always default back to my intention. What's my intention for doing this? Because if I'm not clear on that, I'm not going to push hard. But once my intention is clear, I'm coming through.
Own it. Own it. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So I'm going to pivot a bit. And again, thank you, participants. You have been wonderful. I'm trying to keep up with the chat and the Q&A. And again, going to combine two. I think this was Shauna, who's a psychologist, and says that she's seeing women leaders making the decision to engage a therapist because of the burnout. And the major issue she's seeing is feelings of inadequacy and weakness. And I'm going to combine that with what Michelle is asking, something that Alison said at the very beginning about what does work-life blend look like? And I think that that is a good combination of those two, the burnout that we're seeing from women execs or women in leadership and work-life blend rather than just work-life balance, which is obviously what we have all been, trained into.
Yep.
And what does that look like when we talk about setting boundaries and so on? What does that look like in practicality? So I'm going to start with Alison and then open up the discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good topic to address here because the reality is that burnout is real and it is very ugly. And I will say to you very, very openly that I started to experience what I didn't know what it was until I engaged the medical practitioners and the therapists to understand what was happening to me. And this started at the tail end of 2024, going into 2025, where the level of ambiguity, the level of agitation, the level of tiredness, no matter how much rest I got, I couldn't shake this feeling to then be able to put a label on it. My daughter loves labels. I fight labels. So
That
when
whole
she
generation.
so to learn that all the heart palpitations I was experiencing in that season was tied to burnout, to feelings of burnout, and the shift that's also happening in my body that we don't like to talk about. So as I
Michelle
told
asked that
some
earlier. Sorry to cross you, Alison. Michelle also asked that earlier about, so I'm going to add that so that you can incorporate that in your conversation, that we achieve these senior roles at a time in life when we're going through perimenopause or menopause. And how do we account for that?
So
I'm just
Michelle,
throwing that in.
Michelle, the reality of perimenopause and burnout was the worst feeling in the world, right? But practically, it happened at a time where I had to pause and reflect. And I didn't pause like taking a week off or something, but literally ask myself some very important questions because I'm going at the same rate, the same pace I was going at 25, and I'm near 50. So something is wrong with that equation, right? And it's not sustainable. So for me, one was getting a therapist, recognizing that, hey, I'm tumbling over, but I have people in front of me crying because they have issues in their personal life. I may be having stuff happening in my personal life, and I'm still responsible to come in and say to the board, hey, these are the great results for the year or for the quarter. And all these things happening all at once, but I'm trying to figure out how to get my daughter off to university. And, all these things are happening all at the same time and recognizing. So this is why I spoke earlier about giving myself grace, about understanding where I am at in that moment and what is required. Because the pace is not slowing down. The reality of the responsibilities are not going anywhere. So what do I do in that moment? So one, I, again, being very intentional, I got a therapist, worked through some things I needed to work through, still working through them, because the load of the responsibility that we carry and the power that we carry, it requires that we self-reflect a lot. I know one of the things that is very important for us as women is to stop and self-reflect. We have to understand where we are, who we're serving, and who needs the most from you in that current time. So for me, to answer the tail end of the question, work-life blend looks like me recognizing that I have to do something personal, and it may be within work time, and starting to manage those things and not manage two calendars anymore. So I will bring them all into one calendar now. And if it means that I need to go to the bank and start something out for school or whatever, I'm going to take the time to do that. And if it isn't in my calendar, it does not exist.
Yeah.
So it's like putting the structures and Safia said systems earlier. My life is set up in that way. I have to compartmentalize because I have so many things to manage. And being able to know I'm at the stage before early in my career, I would never say to my corporate secretary, I'm sorry, I need this board meeting date shifted. I would never do that before. Now I'm comfortable. I'm at a stage where I can do that. Because it's just not a good fit and it puts too much additional pressure on me. And I know where I am personally. If I'm now trying to get out of burnout, the additional pressure is just not going to help.
Yeah. I think
And
you
I
have to have some non-negotiables as well, right?
yeah.
So for me, first of all, work-life blend for me, it starts with have a job you love. I love my job. I love getting up every day. I love my team, and I'm not just saying that. So if you want work life, because work life balance means these things have to be so separate, and people have this thing that to have this work life balance, my life has to balance off this awful thing called work, right? But if you enjoy and coming to work every day, and I tell my team this, and we do a lot of stuff together to make work fun. So it doesn't feel like this, but I'm constantly on a plane. I am in my house maybe 1 week a month now, and it's a lot of juggling. But what is non-negotiable for me is my yoga in the morning. I might do an hour one day, I might do 10 minutes one day, I might do 30 minutes one day. But I always do something of some kind of activity to start my day. So whether I'm in a hotel room, wherever I am, that has become non-negotiable. And I think that has really made it easy for me to handle so much because it gives me energy. But I would say work-life blend first, you have to love your job. If you don't love going to work, don't be in it. Don't be in it unless you absolutely, absolutely have no other choice.
Shafia?
Yeah, just to come in here, one of the points you make is about therapy. And in our Caribbean context, this is actually taboo sometimes. And it's only lately I realized that, internationally, it's natural, it's normal to have a therapist at different, especially when you're a senior leader. And when I leaned into that and actually engage a therapist, it's the best I've felt in a long time because I had this avenue, this non-judgmental avenue where you don't feel weak. I think my therapist used to have to kick me out of his office because you just release everything. And when you leave there, you feel refreshed and you're like, all right, let's go again. But we have to move away from seeing therapy as something negative. Just like your body, just like the yoga, you need things that would make you a holistic human being. We have to always remember that we are humans. We are not machines. Even machines need oil. Machine needs oil change. Machines need all sort of changes, sounds they make. So you don't think as humans, we have those same and even more needs than that. And we need to lean into that. And I want to repeat what I said earlier, that life doesn't soften just because you have your other obligations. Life doesn't pause. And so you have to be able to be clear about your boundaries, but not just be clear without over explaining and giving yourself permission to lead as a whole person. Because when you're human, your performance doesn't have to be seen as weak. It doesn't have to feel weak. It is the best way that you're going to sustain how you perform over time. So it's important to remember you're human, you're a whole person, and we need to pause. We need to take care of that human side, that temple. Let me go a little biblical. That temple needs care from time to time. And so we need to be able to carve that space and be very intentional about carving that space out.
And I think it's important for us to recognize, like you, Alison, I thought 2 years ago I was going nuts. What is happening? Because I could not identify what was happening. I did my Dr. WebMD and Dr. Google, and I had every condition known to man. And then it was when sitting
You're
down
about
with a
to die
therapist to
tomorrow.
realize, oh, I am not 25, so when did that happen, etc., etc. And for those who are in the chat, Amanda has been a wonderful, engaging in the chat, talking about burnout is not the cost of ambition, it is a warning sign that leadership has mistaken exhaustion for excellence. And when businesses constantly reward urgency over sustainable impact, they don't just drain energy, they lose creativity, clarity, and talent. Everything that you ladies have said about working yourselves out of a job, that succession planning, that leaving a legacy, meaning that you mentor the next generation, that if you are not there, the business doesn't stop. That is the hallmark of great leadership that results in success that lasts without breaking. And I think our generation has to be the one to do it. I think our generation thinks that, but I think our generation has the responsibility to break traditional look or definition of success for those who are coming after us to say that real leadership, quoting Alison Amanda again, builds success that lasts without breaking the people who carry it, whether they're male or female. And I just want to end that thought with the number one killer of women is not cancer, is not breast cancer, and the number one killer of women is heart disease
Mhm.
and is often undiagnosed. And then you say she died suddenly. She didn't die suddenly.
She
She
was
was
dying.
internalizing all of everything you spoke about without having an outlet or an avenue or giving herself the permission to be human first and not superwoman. And I know I said I was going to end. I remember many, many years ago, my husband and I were at almost similar levels in our organizations. And I went into the organization that he ran to complete a transaction. And I am not one to use title to get ahead. I stayed in line, etc., etc. And then the lady, I said I needed to hurry up because I needed to get back to the office. And the lady looked at me, and this is Sandra's comment as well. Her best and worst supervisors have been female. The lady
Female,
looked at me and said, but none of the managing directors' wives work. And I am not one to lose it. I am really chill. I lost it that day and really spoke more acerbically than I could have or should have. But I could not imagine that a woman would look at me, seeing me dressed for work, and say, "But the MD's wives don't work, so your time is of no value. You can wait." I was utterly, and that was like 25 years ago. I am still pissed at that. Sorry for my French. And we will take that out of the recording when we curate it. But yes, everything that you said really valid. And as we go to the last few minutes, because can you believe it? The hour is almost up. Talking about leaving that legacy, building that mentorship. I want you to think about we are at the start of 2026. As you project over the next 5 to 10 years, what do you want our audience to take away? The message you want. I started with that about what you wanted them to know about you. What do you want them to take away? And I'm going to give you each a minute and then we will wrap up. That really encapsulates everything we spoke about and that legacy building next 5 to 10 years, your vision for their development. And how can they start on that journey now? I know it's a big ask.
All right, I guess I started so I can end first. um just understanding that the world is changing, and as women, we have a critical role to play in shaping that future. And one of the reasons for that is that we understand, and I mentioned it before, to how to be different things. So we need to have the courage to make hard decisions, but the emotional fluency to bring people along. And really, the future of leadership demands boldness, but it also demands humanity. It demands the conviction, you flip out in the room as you may see fit, but it must be paired with care, which we are good at. So if leadership has to continue to not just get results, but also commitment. And we have a great tendency to do so with emotional awareness, where we don't just drive results, we build trust, we build loyalty. And with those fundamentals, organizations could actually perform and endure and be sustainable. So be full woman, be both. You can have the conviction, the boldness, the audacity, the courage, but at the same time, be human and be willing to have care and empathy, because that's who we are, and we should be true to ourselves even as we deliver the results.
Great. I think I'll
Excellent.
follow from you because what I'm going to say is a little bit different, but along the lines. And what I would want to tell for all the young women out there, and I think what we have accomplished as women in leadership is what we have done is given you choice, right? Choice is freedom. I think there's also a different type of pressure of women who don't want to work, who want to choose to be a wife and a mother, which is just as important. So I think when we start to think about who we are as women and what we want, be authentic to yourself. Everybody doesn't have to be the boss. Everybody doesn't have to be a CEO. We need everyone in all roles. So when you think about, who you are and what you want, do not be embarrassed if you don't want a career. I think for a legacy, what I have been able to do is to give people choice, choice being opportunity. I would say it and I say it all the time. I don't believe in equality. There's no such thing as equality with men and women. We are not the same. We will never be the same, nor would I want to be like them. Let me put it that way, right? As you said, Shafia, we have to lead as women in our way as women, not follow what was done before. We are breaking barriers, and let's not just break barriers by being in a position, but leading differently, understanding people and that everybody needs are different, and our path is not necessarily the path that everyone must travel. So be true to yourself. Choice is there. Take advantage of choice and never doubt that you could accomplish anything you put your mind to.
And
Awesome. Awesome. I would definitely like to close by sharing with the audience that, leadership for the times we're in, it has to continue to evolve, right? I think that we as women in leadership now, we have to be intentional to start to make the changes that are necessary so that as others step into the role, we've already started to create a different expectation and environment for them to flourish. I think that is very important. It's recognizing that we can show up and be vulnerable. We can share story. We can use storytelling as a part of the experience that the persons coming behind us have. As I said, if many of my leaders before said this thing is hard, I would have known what I was getting into, right? Nobody said it was this difficult, and leadership is a struggle, and we have to become vulnerable enough to share some of those stories so people have that choice that Maria is talking about. You make an informed choice. It's recognizing that we don't have to have ultimate control of every ball that is in our hands or in our remit or in our responsibilities. I like to say to my team now, especially my director, just please, I'm delegating more, so you need to go and look within the team, and you have to start to curate that team that can help support the things that I'm passing down. Because if I pass down and you don't have someone to pass down to, then you are going to experience the same thing that I have been experiencing, and I would like to shield you from that. So it's us as women showing each other grace and recognizing that building good connections, if this is the most important thing I will say to you, building good connections is part of the strategy for success. There are people you will have to rely on, whether it is as sponsors when they're in rooms that you're not in, whether it is as your mentors, whether it is as your coach, whether it is as a therapist. You need support. This is not a role that you can assume and presume by yourself. It is one that requires you to be well connected and have the infrastructure and the systems behind you so that you can function in a space that allows you to blend all of your responsibilities and know that the day that you're not operating at your best, you are still good enough and have already earned the right to be there, so that your courage be the framework for the confidence that emerges. And those are the points that I would leave you with.
The only thing, if I could just add one thing, Alison, absolutely, a support system, have a hugger. I have somebody, when I had a really bad day, I say, you know what, today was really bad, I'm just coming for a hug. Be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to say today was a bad day, because then when you get rid of it today, tomorrow will be better for sure.
Now, in my role as moderator, I'm supposed to take everything that was said in the last hour and curate it in the next 30 seconds. I'm giving myself permission to not even do that. That is my takeaway.
You're giving yourself grace.
I'm giving myself grace because no way that I am going to attempt to do that to show that I can, because I cannot. I just want to end this session by telling my team here at SCHSB, we have to do this again. And this particular topic, because I think there's so much that was left unsaid. The audience has been with us. Thank you so much for engaging so beautifully. You were wonderful. I want to thank the team for a couple of takeaways that I have. So this is Sonia's personal takeaway and not me summarizing. Permission to be authentic and not to change my character. Permission to be steadfast in my beliefs and not be at flotsam and jetsam depending on the environment. Position to be vulnerable and reach out for the support systems because I am not superwoman. Pretending was great, ran its course, not sustainable, and therefore have that support team and infrastructure that is necessary. Maria, thank you for that last piece. I am a touch. My love language is touch. Permission to be able to touch and a hugger and so on without having to apologize. And from the beginning, from the time I was like 5 years old in school, they said I talk too much. Embracing that.
Would not have
You would have
guessed that.
heard me even when we started to apologize because I burst into the room with the energy and then realized, oh, I have to pull back because I'm supposed to be professional. Being my authentic self. This is my takeaway. Be your authentic self as you build beyond the barriers that have been established and develop our own definition of success as we build legacy. Define your purpose. I think that's really important, defining our purpose in life, and then perform to the best of our abilities at the different seasons of life and building who's going to come behind us, whether it's in our personal lives with our children or those who we mentor if we don't have children and so on. There will be life after us, and we embrace that too. And performing at our best at what our best is at that moment in time, which may not always look the same every day or every year, but knowing that we are not even competing, we are evolving to the best that we can possibly be and giving ourselves permission to be human. Shafia, I'm using your term, to be human first. That happens to be female, but to be human first. And that is where we are going to end. Sorry, audience, we took you just slightly past the hour, but I thought that was important. To say it has been a delight is an understatement. And the accolades coming back from the audience who are saying an hour was not enough. And they are thanking you for being so vulnerable, transparent, and authentic to speak of the issues that really are what you are dealing with and talking a bit about your journey. Do not be surprised if we ask you to do this again sometime before 2026 is out, part 2, and continuing the discussion to really now talk about what are the frameworks that we can put in place to allow our next generation of leaders to be themselves and define that success and have the choices that you spoke about. Team, it has been wonderful. Thanking the team at SCHSBM. Participants, thank you for spending part of your morning or afternoon with us because you may have been in different parts of the world. We had people from everywhere, including Belize and so on. They gave all of your greetings from right through the Caribbean and beyond. And ladies, we know what your calendars look like. Thank you for answering the call and being part of our discussion beyond barriers this morning with the SCHSBM. Good morning or good afternoon, all. Delightful to have you. And we are going to sign off now and have we are Wednesday. I started that way, right? Wednesday, we're the hump day. So have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
Nice
thank
meeting
you.
you guys.
Bye-bye. Same.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.